Alright, you are welcome to this English language class. I am Mr. Kayode Olugbola, your English language instructor for today's class. This e-learning platform is brought to us by Isaac Humanitarian World Foundation. Yes, this is a foundation that helps students in providing solution to their academic challenges and problems, particularly for today in the area of English language. So if you have any challenge in English language in the course of studying, you are free to ask us your questions through our online our different numbers. And as I said, this e-learning platform is brought to us by Isaac Humanitarian World Foundation. And for today's English language class, I want to look at this topic: indirect or reported speech. Indirect or reported speech. That is our topic for today's English language class. Now, before we go to indirect or reported speech, we have to first know what a direct speech is. Direct speech. You have to know direct speech. Then from there, we progress to indirect or reported speech. Now, what is a direct speech? A direct speech is the first-hand information. The first-hand information or the speech of a speaker, which is expressed to the second party. The first-hand information or the speech of a speaker, which is expressed to the second party, is called direct speech. By direct speech, it means when a speaker expresses a comment to the second party, it is direct in form. For instance, my speech to you all is direct. Why? It is a first-hand information from the speaker to the listener or the hearer. Take note. So it is from the speaker to the listener. That is direct. But by the time you, the listener, want to recount or express my comment to the third party, it becomes indirect or reported. Hence, a direct speech is best defined as the first-hand information or the speech of a speaker that is expressed to the second party. And note, a direct speech usually exists in a quotation. It is always quoted. A direct speech is always being quoted. Why? To show the first-hand information or the speech of a speaker. It will always exist in a quotation mark. Then, what is an indirect speech? An indirect speech is the second-hand information or the speech of a speaker, which is expressed to the third party. While direct speech is expressed to the second party, indirect speech, otherwise called reported speech, is expressed to the third party. That's why I said that indirect speech is the second-hand information or the speech of a speaker, which is expressed to the third party. Now, indirect speech is otherwise called reported speech. Indirect speech is otherwise called a reported speech. And take note, an indirect speech is usually expressed with that clause. An indirect speech is usually expressed with that. Yes, but note, this that is somewhat optional. It may or it may not be there. Indirect speech is usually expressed with that, and that there is somewhat optional, meaning it may or it may not be there. While direct speech is usually being quoted to show the first-hand information of the speaker. An indirect speech is expressed with word that clause. Take note. Now, for us to change an expression from direct to indirect form, what are the steps that must be taken? This is why, as students of English language, you all must know what the steps that are what required in answering what English language what questions. Yes, English language is not a crazy subject, only that it does not what require fallacies. You must know steps in what in answering English language word questions. Why? The topics are what have been arranged in your syllabus, and there are steps in what there are steps that you must follow or take in the course of what of studying what those topics. Now, under indirect speech, what are the steps that must be taken to change an expression from direct form to indirect or reported speech? As I've said, take note. An indirect speech is otherwise called what? A reported speech, and it is usually expressed with that also. Step 1, to change an expression from direct to a reported speech, the following changes will take place in indirect word speech. So I have direct. Let me listen on the board for you. We have a table here. Let's have a table to show what will change. So let's have a direct here. This is direct speech. This word indirect or reported speech. So when you have a direct expression, the following words in direct expressions will change to the following in indirect word expressions. So number 1, when you have noun in direct, by the time you want to report an expression, it will change the word then. Now becomes what? Then. Ago becomes what? Before. Here becomes what? There. At this moment, in indirect becomes what? At that moment. At that moment. This becomes what? That. This becomes those. Also, if you have henceforth indirect, by the time you report it to indirect, it becomes what? Thenceforth. Henceforth becomes what? Thenceforth. If you have yesterday indirect, it becomes what? The previous day. It becomes the previous day in indirect. If you have today in direct speech, by the time you report it, it becomes what? It becomes that day. That day. If you have tomorrow in direct, it becomes what? The following day. The following or next day. The following or next day. Yes. If you have last week, last month, or last year. Yes, these are the 3. If you have last week, last month, last year in direct speech, by the time you report the expression, it changes to what? To the previous week, month, or the previous word year. Take note. Also, if you have next week, month, or year. That is in your direct speech. By the time it is being reported, it becomes what? The following week, month, or year. Take note. Now, in your reported speech, in your direct speech, when you have present tense verb, we change to what? Past tense verbs. Present tense verbs, we change to what? Past tense verbs. Then past tense verbs, we change to what? Past participle verbs. Take note. Then let's add pronouns. When you have I, not direct, I will change the word he or she. When you have mine becomes what? His or her. Yes. Then others include other changes that will take place. You see how more? We have I becomes what? He or she. Mine becomes what? His or her. We have our, not direct. Our becomes what? Dear. Yes. We have your becomes what? Our. Your becomes our. If you have is and they'll change the word was. If you have we change the word. Will change to were. Then if you have was and were, we change the word had been. Okay, if you have and as, they become what? Had. If you have had becomes what? Had been. If you have do and does, they change the word did. If you have did, you change the word had done. Take note. Did you change the word had done? So did will change the word had done. Also, the modal auxiliaries. If you have shall, this present tense modal auxiliary, that is shall, will, can, may. This verb shall, will, can, may in present form, they will all take the word past tense. So shall becomes what? Should. Will becomes what? Would. Can becomes what? Could. While may becomes what? Might. Yes. All these will change in what? In our expression. All this will change in the expression into what? Into passive form, into indirect form. They will change to indirect form. All these, when you have any of these in direct form, direct expression, by the time you want to report it, this is what will appear in your indirect speech. If you have any of these in your direct expression, by the time you want to report it, this is what will appear in your reported speech, otherwise called indirect expression. Now, let's see examples to buttress my point, particularly the table that is drawn on the board. Example 1 now. Example 1. I don't want to rub this off so that I can make reference to that table based on what you will change in your sentence. Let's see example 1. Number 1 now. Example 1. I will travel next week. to London to see my son. I will travel next week. I will travel next week to London to see my son. Said the man. I want you all to note something here. That's why I put it in this format for you. If you are conversant with my rule, my rule under adverbial ordering, you can see that something is wrong here. I want you all to point it out for me. That's why I deliberately put it in this format so that I can correct it. Now look at it. I will travel next week to London to see my son. What is wrong here? Look at the time and the place. I see. Next week. And where? To London. I have told you, when adverbs appear in clusters in a sentence, you must arrange them in their what? Order of arrangement. What's the order of arrangement? MPT. Manner, place, and time. Place will always come before time. And where is time? Where is time here? Time is next week. This is what? London. So the best arrangement will be this will come here, this word will go here. So let's rewrite the sentence. I deliberately put this for you so that you can note this. And then when you're writing, you change it. So let's have the correct one now. Example 1 now for the class. I will travel to London next week to see my son, said the man. I will travel to London next week to see my son, said the man. We have to report this. This is direct. Why is it direct? It is expressed in what? A quotation mark. It is the first-hand information of this speaker, which is what? The man. So, to change this now, this table should be what? Taken into consideration. What are those things that will change in this direct to indirect form? I told you, I will change. I will change. Will also change. Next week, we change. My will change. I will change in the sentence as we have here. Will change as we have here. Then next week we change as we have here. Mine will change as we have here. So the sentence now will now be the man in indirect form. The man said, look at it. I said indirect speech is usually what? Expressed with that. But that is what? Optional. So I will put that here. Like I said, the man said that. Or I can even what? Remove that and then write my sentence. The man said that. First thing, I will change the word he. He will change the word. Will becomes what? Would. He would. He would next thing, travel to London. Now, next week, we change the word the following week. You travel to London the following week. The following week, to see my, we change the word is, to see his son. That's all. I will travel to London next week to see my son, said the man. In reported form, we change the word. The man said that he would travel to London the following week to see his son. That's example 1. Last example for this aspect. Let's take another example to buttress our point. 10 years ago, I was in Brazil to see my friend, said Aboki. 10 years ago, I was in Brazil to see my friend, said Aboki. That is direct in form. Now, to change it to indirect form, what are the words that will change? Ago will change. I will change. Was will change. Mine will also what? Change. Yes, ago will change the word. Ago change to before. I will change the word. He was will change the word. Had been. Mine will change the word. He. So let's write down the word. Aboki said that 10 years ago becomes what? Before. 10 years before, I become what? He. Was becomes what? Had been. Had been. 10 years before, he had been in Brazil. He had been in Brazil to see. Mine becomes what? Is friend. That's all. 10 years ago, I was in Brazil to see my friend, said Aboki. He reported from what I mean. Aboki said that 10 years before, he had been in Brazil to see his word, friend. So that brings us to the end of today's class on the reported speech, otherwise called indirect speech. Yes. Thank you all for your audience. I hope you all enjoyed the class. This e-learning platform was brought to us by Isaac Humanitarian World Foundation. I will see you all some other time. Thank you for listening. God bless.